Hey, so I'm planning my satire unit right now. So it is Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Poe, all that spooky American lit stuff. And I wanted to just bring you along while I think through it. So I've been using The Nightmare Before Christmas as my planning anchor, which I know sounds weird, but stick with me because it's actually working out pretty well. And the more I plan, the more I keep thinking about how Jack's whole arc is basically teacher burnout. Like he's chasing Christmas the way we chase the next shiny teaching strategy. He's performing Pumpkin King the way we perform Amazing Teacher. And the whole thing crashes before he figures out what he actually wants. So I think that this is something that is so pertinent to us as teachers. So um, by the way, there's a workbook in the link that you can go grab if you want to plan along with me. And let's get going. So, once students can identify what's funny and what the level of comedy is, which I go over in the last video, we need to start talking about who is being mocked. And in both Nightmare Before Christmas and Sleepy Hollow, the protagonist is the butt of the joke. So Jack thinks he understands Christmas, right? Ichabod thinks he's going to win Katrina and climb the social ladder, but they're both really delusional tryhards. But here's what's kind of interesting, right? Tryhard is seen as a bad thing. Like, why is that? It's an insult. But what's the difference between healthy ambition and being a tryhard? I think it's about whether you're leaning into your actual expertise or abandoning it to chase something you don't understand. This Jack is Halloween, right? He's the Pumpkin King. He's literally the insider, the expert, the star. But he feels empty, so he chases Christmas. And by doing so, he becomes an outsider trying to like almost perform expertise instead of doing something that he is like so, as part of his DNA. He decides to do something that he doesn't really get. So, and then we look at Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and Ichabod is a teacher. Like that's his actual skill. But instead of like leaning into a skill, he decides what he wants to do is chase wealth and status through Katrina. So he's trying to belong in this rural Dutch culture when he's fundamentally an outsider there. So I want students to think about this on a spectrum. So what does ambition become? When does ambition become try hard performance? And when are you growing versus when are you abandoning your expertise? Like, how do you know if you're Jack, like you're delusional with your overreach, or you're just trying to learn something new? So we can do something similar to what we did in the last episode where we were looking at the comedic ladder. So we can build a ladder or continuum, maybe something like deepening existing expertise, learning adjacent skills, exploring new territory thoughtfully, abandoning expertise for novelty. And then we get to like delusional overreach. And students can place characters on this continuum and defend their placement. So that's the first thing that I want to do. And I have a Substack article where I go through this like ladder process, how we can use that more in our teaching. And you can check that out. I'll put a link there in the description. So then, okay, this is a little nerdy of me, but we have this Irving meta layer, which I think is so interesting because Irving is writing satire about tryhards while being a tryhard himself. In my research, I found out a lot more about Irving. When I taught American Lit for the first couple years, we had to teach chronologically, like we all did that as a department, and then I moved away from that. But I kind of stayed away from Irving, so I didn't learn a lot about him. I just made different choices in what I taught during that time period. But if you're like me, I'll give you a little rundown of what I learned. So he's an American writer, obviously. And what he's doing, we're talking about early American lit, and he's trying to create an American literary tradition. to prove that American literature can be real literature like European lit. And how does he do it? By adapting German legends, of course. So the Headless Horseman comes from German folklore. So Irving is mocking Ichabod for trying to fit into a culture he doesn't understand, while Irving is doing the exact same thing with literature. He's borrowing European tradition to legitimize American writing. Is that satirizing himself? I wonder if he's self-aware about this. Does it make the satire deeper or does it undercut it? I don't know if all of our students will get that, but it's something just really interesting to think about. And I'll just toss it out and see if it catches with my students. But these are questions I want students to wrestle with. Not just the like identify the archetype, but what does it mean that the author might be mocking himself? It's not something that we really think about, right? But when you put that lens on it, it's, I think, more interesting. So I think this hits home for me because, well, okay, we're reading this story about a teacher who is the butt of the joke, right? And we are insiders. We are the experts. We know our content. We know our students. We've been doing this for however long we've been doing it, but we're constantly painted as outsiders. Often by admin, by policy, by public perception, or sometimes we paint ourselves as outsiders. Like, I'm not like those burnt out teachers. I'm still innovative or whatever. Like, we put ourselves in a different category. And then we chase the next shiny thing to prove what? That we're still relevant, that we deserve respect. We spend so much time trying to prove that we know what we're doing. I think more so than we actually spend time doing it sometimes. Not like us as individuals, but like us as a community. So instead of like performing that innovation or chasing trends, I think that maybe what we need to do is just lean into our expertise. Like think about it. Like, what if being the insider, the experienced teacher who knows what works is actually enough? I mean, I think it is. So that's something that I've just been thinking about a lot as I've been working on this unit, that like we need to almost like, I don't know, I want to say stand on our power and really do what we know works and help our students. Like, I think we need to take more control over what we know needs to happen now. As we get into this conversation about what is AI going to do for our students in both negative and positive ways, one thing I know is that thinking is going to become increasingly important as students outsource. What is really, really going to be important is those students that don't learn how to think. So what can we do? We can give them more tools to be strong thinkers. It's what we've always done, but I think it's even more important now that we give them the tools to be strong thinkers. Okay, so my planning question, getting back to this a little bit, is how do I teach character archetypes? So we're thinking about like the tryhards, right? How do we teach this in a way that serves our satire analysis, which is what this whole unit is about? And as I'm thinking about archetypes, I'm not thinking about like the hero's journey version where we identify mentors and threshold guardians, that kind of thing, but like archetypes as satirical targets. So we have like that outsider who overreaches, and we see that a lot, right? In this case, we have Jack and we have Ichabod. And then we have the tryhard who abandons their expertise. So this is also both of them. And we have the voice of reason who gets ignored. And we see that a lot too, right, Sally? And the community that enables this. So we have Halloween Town and Sleepy Hollow villagers. And if we're thinking about us, which I don't suggest we bring into the unit, but we have that community that enables this delusion of like this us against them kind of thing with, I don't know who we're against, but it's that the teachers are against something, and we have this community that is perpetrating this kind of relationship. And these aren't just character types, they're the people and the systems being mocked, right? So the actual activity that I'm planning. Okay, so I've thought through a couple things here. So we can do some character comparisons, which I think I want to do. We can make it really simple. So if I decide that I want to do a writing activity at this point, maybe it could be a perspective activity, maybe writing from Sally's perspective. And we have analysis. So looking at when ambition becomes delusion. So we can look at that ladder. We can do that. So we can have a ladder activity where we discuss. I think that I'll have to look at all the activities that I have in my unit and how they're actually going to take time before I decide exactly what we're going to do here, because these could be discussions for sure. But they could actually be things that students write down and I potentially grade or give feedback on. And then what I am thinking is we'll apply this lens to Poe and Hawthorne. So who are their tryhards? This is how we're going to make the switch a little bit. And who is mocking whom? And we actually, what I'm thinking as a transition is looking at the way Irving, Poe, and Hawthorne actually related to one another, because they were very critical of each other. All three of them were quite the critics. And I'd say that's something else that I didn't really know about Poe. Poe is super interesting, and I actually wrote about Poe specifically, so I'll put that for you to check out too. But yeah, so we have, you know what else I think I want to bring in? This us, talking about us as Americans. So we as a country often mock those tryhards, those people who care too much or try too hard to be smart and show effort. Like education, like we want to be educated, but we want it to look effortless, to be really cool, you know? And a student who studies is called a tryhard, actually, in a negative way, right? Natural talent is praised. And it's a problem, right? Because students don't see that some of those students that are doing really well are actually trying pretty hard. For some of them, it is pretty effortless because they haven't hit the point where school is hard yet. But what this does is it creates a culture where intellectual effort is embarrassing. It's like cringe, right? And it seeps into our identity as Americans too. And when we look back at The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Ichabod literally is education, right? He's a teacher, but he's mocked for it. And his book learning makes him foolish and not wise. And we look at Jack's intellectual curiosity about Christmas, and that is treated as obsession and delusion. So both are punished for trying to think and learn beyond their station. And we bring in, like, I'm interested in this, like, Irving layer, right? Because he's mocking the intellectual, but he's also an intellectual trying to create a literary tradition. So is he satirizing American anti-intellectualism or participating in it or both? So that's something to think about and tie in here. So, and part of the reason that I think we have trouble here is we're intellectuals in this somewhat, well, anti-intellectual culture. And we are sometimes mocked for caring too much about education or caring about it in the wrong way. And students mock each other for trying too hard. And sometimes we fall into this trap where I don't know if mocking is the right word, but we might mock those teachers who are, and I say like those teachers who are too serious, you know, or not serious enough sometimes, but here's the American thing about try hard. It really reveals this weird intellectual streak we have. We mock people who care too much, who show effort, who try to learn as a culture, not us as teachers, of course. Um, but that's one of the things that we are combating a little bit as we are thinking about how to approach all of these things in education, like just teaching our students and helping them to see where they are in our world. Because education is supposed to look effortless and be cool. And if students are working too hard, then something must be wrong. And just to get back to Sleepy Hollow, Ichabod, who is literally a teacher and education is his job, is the joke here. His book learning is what makes him foolish. And it's really American, right? Mocking the person who tries to think or learn too hard. And the fact that we have this in our early American literature, I think, is something to look at. So part of why I am teaching this unit is, or thinking through this unit, is to stop being Jack as much, to think about how I can come back to strategies that I know work and to sharpen those and lean into my strengths instead of trying to seek out something new, because I don't think there's a lot of new answers out there. I'm not like anti-technology. I'm not anti-evolution or anti-innovation, but I think it needs to be tempered with what we know works. And I think we have actually thrown out quite a bit that we did know works in search of something that's better. So one of the things that I'm doing a lot this year is going back to some of those strategies that I used before that I know work. And that's what I'm really looking at in all of my content. So, all right, we've got how to identify satire through the comedic ladder, and we've got the archetypes that get mocked. And I think what's next is to talk about the system that is creating the tryhards in the first place. And we got into that a little bit, but when we get into the text more specifically, we're talking about the community echo chamber that keeps everyone stuck. Okay, so again, remember there's the workbook there in the notes if you want to go through this with me, and I have some resources for you there if you check out the link. Thanks. Next one here.